So for our meeting, welcome everyone again to our first book club across the Veil meeting. Our book for this month, September, is written by Jane Asher and her mom Betty Asher, called The Next Room. So Shelby Dan, my daughter, in case anyone came in late, Shelby Dan, can you wave? My daughter Shelby is our co-host. And so what we're going to do for our meeting is we're going to start with Jane talking about her journey leading up to writing the book, describing her signs and talking about what the signs and connection with spirit mean to her. And if Jane would like to read some samples describing what she's talking about from her book, we'd appreciate that. And then after Jane finishes, we're going to have a question and answer period. So you'll get a chance to ask Jane questions directly. And if everyone's familiar with how to raise their hand, it's under reactions. So if you click on the little icon for reactions, there will be a little hand raised, and then I'll ask you to unmute your mic so you can ask your question. If any questions come up during the meeting that you don't want to wait for, or you don't want to forget, you're welcome to type your question into the chat box, and we can ask it during the question and answers. And then after all of that, when we're finished with the question and answers, Jane is going to do a book giveaway. So Jane will describe how to contact her to get your copy. And then we're going to probably, if anyone wants to type into the chat before we close the meeting, any books that they want to recommend for upcoming meetings. And also I wanted to say, and I'm going to say it at this point, and hopefully I'll remember to say it before the close of the meeting. If you would rate and review Jane's book on Amazon or anywhere else that you might purchase Jane's book, give it a rating and a review. It really helps. And a lot of times people don't remember to do that, and it's so important to the author. And in Jane's case, some of the proceeds of sales of her books go to charity. So anything that you can do, it's an easy thing to do to help augment her donations to charity. And she'll describe that before the end of the meeting as well. So, so that being said, I'll turn it over to Jane, and maybe I'll remind you of the questions I have, and I'll stop talking.
Thank you. I really appreciate this, Camille, and thanks, Shelby. You know, time is an illusion, and it's also a gift. And the fact that each and every one of you would take an hour out of your day to join us here for this first inaugural book chat, it really is very meaningful. So I appreciate it. Boy, let's see. I'm the baby of 6, raised in a very Christian kind of buttoned down Midwest family. My mother was and is my best friend, and she crossed over in 2010. And at that point, you know, I didn't know how to proceed with life. I didn't even know grief could feel like that. I had no idea. I think for the first year, I didn't eat a lot. I walked around in a stupor, and I had kids, I had teenagers, and I was trying to figure it out, but I'm like, what is happening? It was overwhelming. So I always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know how to write a book. And I always had this thing in the back of my mind that would be really cool to kind of take her knowledge, and she was super wise and excuse me, very direct. And so after she crossed, I just, started writing everything down. I created this Facebook page where I could park my grief, didn't ask any of my friends to join it, just was there so that I could have somewhere to say, I'm hurting, I'm sad, I'm lonely. I would post pictures, I would post love letters to her, Mother's Day, her birthday, whatever, around the holidays when I would miss her. And so that sort of started this thing where I was kind of like creating, and I didn't even realize I was creating this book at the time. So then flash forward, I lose the other very significant woman in my life, my big sister, Lynn. I'm literally flying home from Lynn's funeral. I'm on the plane going from Detroit to San Diego, and I had to write her a letter. So I pulled out, like, the only piece of paper I had was the back of my Delta boarding pass. And I'm writing, Dear Lynn. I'm writing my big sister a letter. I'm sobbing. I'm drinking a glass of wine. I'm a wreck, right? I'm coming home from her funeral. And in this letter, I said to her, how do I ask Mom to co-author this book with me? Because it had been kind of playing around in my head that I could connect, because I had connected my dad with my mother through this friend of mine, psychic medium Pam. And Lynn just came in like a lightning bolt. And she said, ask your friend Pam. Ask Pam if she'll connect with you and connect with Mom to write the book together. And I was like, oh my God, what a great idea. Plane lands. Next day, I called Pam. I'm like, Pam, my sister Lynn, and she just died, and she told me I should ask you. And Pam's like, settle down. What is it that you need to ask me? And I said, would you be willing to connect with Mom? And then I'll ask all the important questions. I want to know about God. I want to know about religion. I want to know about, people that do atrocious acts on the planet. I want to know about limitations and all of it, all the big stuff. And she said, absolutely. She goes, I'd be happy to. So great. So I started having sessions with my beautiful friend, Pamela Osley, and I would have all these questions, and she would record the sessions, and then I would listen back, and I'd come out and do my transcribing on my computer. So great. So I feel like I have this book. I've got part one is me growing up in Deckerville, Michigan. Wonderful upbringing with two amazing people that were married 62 years. Part two is me meeting Pam as a young woman in Santa Barbara. And part three is my mother answering questions that I need to know about. I need to know about grace and forgiveness and all of it. So I think I have the book. I'm like, all right, part one, part two, part three. I felt really good about it. And I reached out to Pam, not to ask my mom any more questions, but to say, are you happy with the direction? And Pam goes, okay, Betty. All right, I'll tell her. Your mother says that she loves the direction of the book. She loves part one, part two, part three. There's going to be a prologue, an epilogue, and a part four. And I'm like, what? Part four? What could I possibly do with part four? And she goes, okay, Betty. All right, I'll tell her. Your mother says that you do not need me to receive these messages, that you've actually been in communication with her since September 31st of 2010. And you can hear her, and you do hear her, and she's giving you all of this. If you'll just get quiet, which I thought was a dig at me liking to talk. I have a podcast. But anyway, I was flipped out. I'm like, I'm not psychic. I'm not a medium. I don't know how to channel messages. And sure enough, I got quiet and I started to meditate. And I started to take mindful walks through the neighborhood with my puppy, and we would smell everything. And while she was smelling things, I was just receiving. And I would come back and I would open up my laptop and I would ask her something that I wanted to know. And it was like, brum, brum, brum. And I couldn't even keep up. It was so crazy, and it was coming through so fast. And every day when I would open up my laptop, I was amazed that she was here still. And I kept thinking, what is going on? Am I losing my mind? And my husband would come out. This is my little studio. He'd open the door. It's out in the garage. And he'd see that I was sobbing as I'm typing. And I would put my hand up like, don't you dare walk in here. And he would just slide a little piece of dark chocolate on the desk and quietly shut the door. So this is like all during COVID, this was happening every day. It was like a perfect storm. I would go in at night and I would read what I had written that I had gotten from my mother. And I would say, this isn't me. I'm not that elevated. I don't have those thoughts. I'm just this human being trying to better herself every day, but I don't have these big grand thoughts. And it was just, it was such a gift. And so it all came together, and I found a wonderful woman to help me publish it and find this gorgeous cover. And then I wanted my mom to have writing credit. And she told me, she said, all those cards I've been sending you for years, my signature's in them. So sure enough, I went and I took her signature and I made it into a stamp, Betty Asher. And so every book that I autograph, I put, Jane and Betty Asher. So it's great. So she gets to autograph the book. So I guess the signs, let me cover those. I know that, I don't have a lot of time, but shortly after she crossed over, I started finding dimes, and I mean everywhere. They're in my car seat as I walk out of Target, church parking lot. I didn't know the significance. I had no idea where they were coming from, but I was a kid who would pick up a dirty penny no matter. So when I started finding dimes, I was intrigued. I'm like, all right, cool, 9 more cents. I dig this. So I started collecting them. And I was on the air. I was working at a radio station here in San Diego, and leading up to Halloween, my mom had just crossed over. So it was that Halloween. We had a psychic medium come on from Los Angeles. Her name's Marissa Ryan. And the boss at the station thought it'd be really fun to connect, our listeners with their loved ones across the veil. So great. I'm like, okay, it'll be good. It'll be decent radio. It'll be fun. So I'm on the air every night with Marissa, and the phone lines are packed because people are, and she was so good. She was giving really amazing messages. And as much as I wanted to talk to her about my mom and my grief, and oh my God, I was freaking out because I just lost mom, I knew she was there to do a job. So I didn't want to bother her, and I didn't. At the end of our session, like I think we were on the air for almost a week to 10 days together, she said, Jane, I don't know why or what the significance is, but every time you find a dime, you need to know those are from your mom. And I'm like, really? That's cool. So I go home, tell my husband, he's like, okay, we start collecting them in a velvet bag. My daughter starts finding them. My son starts finding them. Tom finds them all the time. Friends of mine would find one. Every time I told them the story, they would find a dime. They'd take a picture and they go, hi, Betty. So now I'm collecting them. I have just an enormous amount of dimes. I have this huge thing. I still don't know why, though. And being the curious woman that I am, I'm like, what is the deal with the dimes? So have you ever had a dream where it floods back over you in the middle of the day? I was sending my dad a happy package for his birthday, and I was at Office Depot getting ready to ship the package. And all of a sudden, this dream recall came over me, and I literally had to hang on because I was so dizzy. And in the dream, my mom is sitting on the edge of my bed. And I propped myself up and I said, Mom, what is the deal with the dimes? And she said, I like to see you smile. And there it was. It was so perfect and simple and genuine and straightforward. And it wasn't this big holy grail message. It was just like her. And once I knew that, it was just like, oh. So as I turn to leave Home Depot, I literally pivot, and down at the right toe of my shoe, 1 shiny dime. I bend down, I pick it up, I'm laughing, I'm talking to my mother the whole way out of the store. People are going, what's going on with the crazy lady holding the dime talking to herself? But I didn't care because I now knew the mystery of the dimes, and it was so sweet and so simplistic. So that became a blog. So I'm like, okay, I've got that. So there were all these things that were happening after she left that I was like, wow, I really need to talk about this. I need to suspend any kind of thought that I'm crazy or that people are going to think I'm nuts. And I need to get this out because in my previous life, I was a rock and roll DJ. I mean, I was on stage, I was backstage with Willie Nelson, I was on the road with Billy Idol. I interviewed all these people, and I have radio's a very interesting business where kind of judgy, and they kind of think they're super cool, and because we're around a lot of rock and roll people. So I didn't feel as though I would be accepted because I did this pivot from being this rock and roll DJ to all of a sudden this metaphysical woman who's receiving all these beautiful messages. And finally, my mom, she said, you have to expand without fear. You have to get out of your own way. You have to stop worrying about what anybody else on the planet is thinking, because you are the voice of those on this side. And it's not just me helping you. There are legions of people and beings that want messages that they will not be shamed, they will not be blamed, that they come from love and they return to love. So there was just all of this goodness was happening. And then finally I'm like, all right, here we go. And so the other really metaphysical thing that happened, and it's only happened once, the following fall, I flew home. Lynn is still alive. I pick Lynn up. We go up to see my dad up in Gaylord, Michigan. And we invite the Schlangs over for cocktails. My folks, really great friends. Ruthie was a huge help to me through Mom's entire, when she transcended and all of it. And so Bob and Lynn and my dad are in the living room having a cocktail. I'm out in the kitchen with Ruthie. We're holding hands. We're just inches apart across the kitchen island. And I'm telling her, I'm looking at her in the eyes, and I'm telling her how much my mom loved her. And my mother's eyes are the color of a Michigan spring day, so blue, just pure blue. Ruthie's are very hazel. She's a gorgeous woman, these kind of hazily eyes. And as I'm telling Ruth how much Mom loved her, this blue light started pulsating through her hazel eyes. It was going voo, voo, voo. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it, and I wasn't afraid, but I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then finally I said, Ruthie, you don't have blue eyes. She dropped my hand. She spun around. She's like, Jane, you're freaking me out. It's your mom. And I said, I know. And I also knew what the message was. My mother was telling me, I can see you. I just have to use my best friend's eyes to deliver the message. And I'm telling you, to this day, because I had to get Ruth's permission, because, I wanted to make sure I had it right. And she repeated the entire story. And I was telling my family. And at that point, they're all like, okay, all right, Jane, sure, you saw blue light coming through Ruthie's eyes. It's never happened again. I don't know if it was a great party trick. I don't know why it hasn't happened again, but boy, it was the best. So great. So there you go. Lots of signs, and the book was absolutely wonderful. She also told me, which is another weird thing, she said that I was going to go on book talks, that I was going to be on stage. And I'm like, how is that going to happen? How do you manufacture that? She's like, you don't need to do a thing. Everyone that you need to meet, you've already met, and you know this. And you don't need to, I give away so many books. I mean, you don't write a book to make money. You really don't. I mean, if it becomes a bestseller, that's a whole nother thing. And that is designed in the stars. But I wrote it because I had a passion, and I had this connection with this person, and she she was like tapping me on the shoulder going, let's go, kid. You know, these messages are all about love and forgiveness, which is actually forgiving to yourself. And they needed to come out. And that's what happened. So here I am. I just got done doing a huge book talk in Santa Barbara, 125 people. I'm kind of like, what is happening? But it was so much fun. And now I'm getting on this circuit of going out and doing what I'm here to do. And she also said, we're going to write 2 to 3 more books, depending on how busy I got. And I thought, I'm not busy. I have a podcast. I work barefoot in boxer shorts. How am I busy? Oh boy, am I busy. Like I'm trying to figure out how to get, like, book 2 is already started and everything, but I need to get dedicated and sit down and get quiet again and listen to her, because there's so much more that needs to come out about the next dimension. We think we're so grand and we're just a teeny tiny little speck. There are just billions of universes and beings from other galaxies. That is what she's showing me anyway. So I think that's a little glimmer into book number 2. So there you have it. I don't know. I know I'm rambling. Anybody have any questions? I'm happy to open it up to anyone that would like to ask me a question.
Well, I have a question. I'll start with the question and answer period. My first question is, did anyone notice Jane's radio voice? Beautiful radio voice. And I want to, before I ask my question, I want to just read a little bit about Jane. And I'm gonna go into, I had my notes, but I'm going to go to Jane's chapter in Gathering at the Doorway, where her biography is at the end of her chapter. So that's, at least I have that prepared. As you can hear, Jane is currently a podcast host. Jane has enjoyed a successful career in media and the music industry, most notably at major radio stations in San Diego and Santa Barbara, and at Virgin Records based out of Chicago. Jane has been a media professional and in the radio business for over 35 years, as she mentioned. She stepped away from terrestrial radio and created her own show called The Next Room, which is available on podcasts. And I highly recommend listening to Jane's show. She has really interesting guests, and a number of our Gathering at the Doorway authors have been interviewed by Jane, which she's generously done. Jane also does mission work. She's been part of a team that has built homes in Tijuana for families in need through Lutheran border concerns. She's traveled to El Salvador to feed the homeless, Malaysia to help build a school on Borneo, Armenia to work with women and children in a village called Amre Taza. And most recently went on a humanitarian mission in the Dominican Republic. Jane also mentioned that she recently spoke at the IANS conference in Santa Barbara to a delighted audience, and her story is fantastic just to hear. So I highly recommend getting Jane's book. So my question I mentioned at the beginning is September 31st. What's the deal with September 31st?
When I moved out to California when I was 22, and I'm the only one, baby of 6. All my sisters are married, and I have nieces and nephews, and just huge, big, fun, boisterous family. My mom didn't want me to lose my contact with the family, so she gave me a calendar that Christmas, or before I moved out, and in all the little boxes were birth dates and anniversaries so that I would remember to pick up the phone or send a card. She did that for me every single year from 22 to 49. The year that she passed, I was 49. I didn't realize at the time that there was a typo on September. that they had added an extra day. So the phone rang. It was, as far as time goes, it was October 1st. But when the phone rang and I picked it up, and my big sister's telling me that mom died, guttural scream. And then all of a sudden I must have been in shock, but I just immediately had to get the four of us on a plane, get back to Michigan. So I grabbed the calendar off the back of the kitchen door that she had given me, and I'm calling Delta, and I'm flipping back and forth. And I'm like, okay, today's the 31st and her funeral's the 3rd. And Delta, the person on the line said, ma'am, there is no September 31st. I'm like, sure there is. It's right here on my calendar. And, it's the 31st. So we, after I get done and I'm talking to my husband, and he's like, Jane, there, 30 days, half September, that's a typo. And then he said, you know what, perhaps your mom slipped into the next room on a day that really doesn't exist. And for some reason, that just added such a gentleness and a softness to that. And every year, as we are approaching it in just not too many days from now, it's like this little subtle shift and a reminder that she really didn't go anywhere. She just faded from my sight. I no longer can see her, but she is with me always. So so that was a fun blog to write, September 31st, because people are like, what are you talking about, lady? So that's the calendar story.
Thank you for that answer, Jane. That's really very interesting. And I love that the take on it. So we have a question, a hand up,
Sure.
Sin. I'm going to ask you to unmute so you can ask your question.
Okay. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Sin.
From San Diego as well, up in Carlsbad.
I love it up there.
And my husband was a DJ out here in radio as well. So some connections there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So a couple of really quick questions. One, from the time that your mother wanted you to get quiet to the time when you started receiving on your own, what was that length of time that difficult for you to get quiet? And the second one is, from Ruthie's point of view, what was the sensation? Was she feeling a sensation at the same time you were when you looked into her eyes?
Two very good questions. Okay, so the book took forever. I would say it was about 6 years. I was always yapping about writing a book. I was like, oh, I'm writing a book, but I really wasn't. I just kept talking about it, and I had, notes, and I have this box called the Angel Box, and that's where I would, crammed everything in there. But it took quite a while. I'd say it was about 6 years between her saying, get quiet and start listening, to me actually getting quiet and listening. I guess I'm a little slow on the uptake. As far as Ruth didn't feel anything, but she immediately knew it was my mom. And Ruth had seen my mother in our home. Ruthie's like this, she's super intuitive, and she swears that she saw my mother in the living room about 2 weeks after she had crossed. She saw her dart across the room. And she couldn't tell anybody because she's married to a very curmudgeon-y German staunch, guy who doesn't believe in any of this. So she knew. And afterwards, we both had, where you get the goosies and the hair on your arm stands up. But yeah, that's a really good question, though.
Thanks, Sin, for your
Thank
question. We have Kimberly's hand up. Kimberly, can you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, Jane. Nice to meet you. I loved
Hi,
your
Kimberly.
couple really quick questions. I also relate to being in the phase of telling everyone I'm writing a book and really having that intention, but just not knowing where the heck to start and make that transition from my current job. So when it came time to getting quiet and you were meditating, what meditation practice worked for you? And also, just a quick second question, when you channel, is it audible that you hear your mom, or is it just a knowing that it's like a stream of consciousness you kind of black out and write, and then you come back after, and that's when you said, okay, that's not me.
Right. I would say the latter. I can hear her, like I can hear her sing, and I hear her laugh, and I hear her pieces of advice, but it was more of me. This is interesting because my husband said, "How are you doing it?" And I said, "I don't know. I honestly don't know. There was really not a process to it. It just occurred." But I start each morning, I have this gratitude practice that before I do anything, I go through a thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then I have this really good quiet time out in my reading chair, and I have a stack of books that I tune into and read. Like I love Melody Beattie's Journey to the Heart. You know, she's just beautiful and poetic. And I think I've read that book for the last 10 years. I read it's a daily reader. I just love things like that. So then I do that. And then I go for a meditative walk with my dog. And I listened to the same soundtrack the entire time I was writing. I listened to an Italian composer pianist called Ludovico Einaudi, and his music is transcendent. I'm someone that has music on all the time, but if I'm listening to Bonnie Raitt or Jackson Browne or Crosby, Stills and Nash, I'm singing, and I'm transported to a different time in my life. Where Ludovico just was this, it was my soundtrack. I had it on my desktop in the background the entire time I was writing. I even thanked him in the book. I mean, he's just brilliant. And so I would walk around the neighborhood with my ear pods in, with my dog, with Ludovico playing. And for some reason, the inspiration was just coming in really strong. Interestingly, though, since I wrote the book, I haven't been listening to his music as much because it's just been overwhelming. I'm like, okay, I need a break. So I would assume once I start listening to his music again, maybe I'll be in receiving mode. So that's a really good question, but don't stop. Please do not stop. What you have inside of you is so important for other people to read, and just write. If I can just tell you one piece of advice, don't worry about it. Just do it. Just do it.
Thank you so much.
You bet. And if you need any help, honestly, I'll connect you. I'll help you. I'm in reading groups, and I'm connected to a lot of people. The gal that put my book together, she's amazing. I have a lot of people that I could connect you with. So if you want to know more or just, just email me. I'll spend all the time you like and help you.
That touches me. Thank you so much. I will.
You bet. You bet.
And Jane means that. I know she does. She's been a huge help to me, and always just generously, anything I've needed, Jane's been there for me. So she will follow up on that if you reach out whenever you need. And this is a good time. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask Jane before it's already 12:51, so our meeting is going to close pretty soon, our lunch meeting or dinner or breakfast, wherever you are. And so if you have any questions, you can put your hand up or enter your question in the chat. I thanks to Brian Smith, who's with us here, for asking that Jane's contact be entered again in the chat. So if you look in your chat, which is at the bottom of your screen, you can click on it, and you can see Jane's website and email address. And Jane is also generously offering a free digital copy of The Next Room, and her email address is in the chat as well. And Catherine is saying, I think I saw Catherine saying she was the only one eating lunch. Catherine, I was drinking coffee. I don't know if I think I saw a couple of other people pop things. yeah, discreetly pop things in their mouths. Oh, there's Kimberly drinking water. So, and Sherry Gallant is having coffee. So this is a nice time. We thought this, Shelby and I actually thought that this would be a nice time to do this because there's so many meetings, Zoom meetings, and even now people are getting back to in-person meetings, which is very nice, a nice turn of events in the world. A lot in the evenings to accommodate people who are working during the day. But Shelby and I thought that maybe we would do a lunch meeting, and if anyone's at work and can take a break on their lunch, they can still join in. So, so Jane, oh, Kimberly also said she ate. So Jane, I'm going to just, Jane has also generously, very generously offered to do a book giveaway today. So I'm going to let Jane describe to you her book giveaway today and how you can contact her so she can send you a copy.
I honestly don't know how to do a book giveaway. I'll give a free digital copy to everyone. And then how about we do this? If you want a hard copy, just email me and I will put it in the mail. I've got these little soft packs. I go to I'll send it out and I'll put a little note in there. And obviously it will be autographed by myself and my beautiful mom, Betty. So just let me know. Just email me, thenextroomwithjane@gmail.com. I'm happy to do that. It's all good. You know, it's just it's a beautiful message to get out to anyone, or it's a nice thing to gift people, which I think is, you know, one of my favorite things to give is books. So.
Yes, Catherine's asking, is it on Amazon? And yes, it is.
Yes. It's
it's available where books are sold. And don't forget, some of us are not in the US. So if your Amazon account is outside of the US, just remember to go to your country. So like we're in Canada, so I would be ordering on amazon.ca. And Jane mentioned her book as a gift. I have given her book as gifts. It's a fantastic gift for anyone. You know, thank you, Ramona. I'm just and Annette Marinaccio is here, and she says thank you, beautiful presentation, Jane.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful book for anyone. You know, if they've been, if they're grieving a loss, if they're interested in connecting with spirit, if they're curious about signs from spirit, there's a lot of common signs that people come across or see, and Jane describes a number of them in her book, not just the dimes. Some of them are quite miraculous. So thanks, Roseanne.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Yeah. So so I just wanted to remind everyone that you know, if you could post your rating and review of The Next Room on Amazon or the site where you purchased the book, it's truly appreciated. It helps get the message out. It helps Jane to augment the donations that she's giving. Jane can describe where her donations are going. So that's always very appreciated by authors and the recipient organizations.
It is.
So,
it is.
I will. A last minute joiner.
I will say though, I really only want reviews if you've read the book. I know a lot of people just want reviews. I don't. I want it a sincere from the heart, what the book meant to you and what you received from it. So I just think that that's really key. I just wanted to say that. And I really do appreciate it. I've gotten some just unbelievable feedback, and it's really fun. I have some I have some fans that are not fans. I have some people that are just really, that it's been very meaningful. A lot of people have lost their loved ones, and they don't understand that they can speak to them and that they do hear every single word and that they are right here with us. So it's super comforting, because a lot of people don't. We've been told that that's not the case. And it really is. I'm here to tell you I'm living proof. And I know Camille, and I know Brian and his connection with his daughter. There's a lot of cool stuff going on right now, and the veil is getting thinner. And so the opportunity to connect with our loved ones is even getting stronger, because there are people like Camille that are putting together amazing books like this, 40 stories. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And so, Camille, huge props to you for everything you're doing and helping us to explore and open up. It's really important. You are really something else, and we all love and admire you, and you're easy to be nice to because you're just such a phenomenal human being. And I love what you've done for this afterlife community. Like, you are the shiz, girl.
Oh, thank you. Well, I ditto to you, Jane, and all you do, and to everyone, including Jane, who contributed to Gathering at the Doorway. I'm so grateful for everyone, and very grateful for everyone that joined our book club. Our first meeting, we'll have our next meeting in October. I'll post our October book on the website, www.aaronsenergy.com. There's a page called the Book Club Across the Veil, where you can buy the book through the hyperlink, and you can also register for the Zoom meeting, and I'll post the date later in October. So gives people a chance to get the book and read the book like we did for our September meeting. So I can't thank Jane enough. I just want for a little plug. Jane has interviewed Sherry Gallant, who's at our meeting today, and Sherry is going to be on Jane's podcast show coming up. So look for that. The podcast is called The Next Room, and you can find that on Jane's website, which appears in our chat. And don't forget to contact Jane for a digital copy of the book. And if you'd like a print copy, Jane will send you. So if anyone else has any comments, it's 1:00. So we're sticking to our lunch break schedule. So if there's anything I missed or any comments anyone would like to make before we sign off. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. If you want to unmute, and everyone can unmute and wave to Jane and say thanks to Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for coming. See you next month.